Hey guys and girls, Bored now, back with you. On this video I will be talking about The Power, Season 1, Episode 1. It is called Better Future is in Your Hands. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always. So this is a new Amazon Prime series. It is based on a novel by Naomi Adaman, who also is the series creator. A novel came out a few years ago, about 2018, and was a popular teenage sci-fi novel at the time. I know it got a lot of critical acclaim. I've not read the novel, so I can't really compare it to this first episode. It's an alternative universe. Gender roles have been reversed, where all the power in the world belongs to girls instead of men, and it's actually the men who fear the girls, and you get this collection of characters who literally come from different backgrounds, and they all have their own kind of special powers. 6 months prior to the events of this all happening, this whole new universe with women on top essentially, so we start to see the world before then, and we just get to know a little bit about these four main girls, their lives before all this happened. The girls at least seem to have a distinct personality. They all seem to come from a different background. So there's one that, there's a story set in Africa, although I'm not quite sure yet who the main character of that story is, but you do get that perspective. You get a budding kind of journalist in Africa who's attempting to get noticed. But you get I think it's I wasn't sure if they were siblings or friends, but you get the guy who's getting close to celebrity, but at the same time to be journalists, and it sort of shows how difficult it is to get your foot on the ladder and to prosper in that kind of environment where the class structure is such a way than it is, balanced in favour of the richer people. So I guess it shows you him trying to get close to this celebrity who has a bit more money and prestige as a way into this, but at the same time he seems to kind of take his friend for granted. And later on we get a scene with her where she's hosting this special social media style party. So we see how she kind of has those same sort of ambitions, how she's trying to tap into social media to kind of get a little bit of credibility and attention. She, as well as this other woman who her friend is seeing, is got these powers. And then you have Roxy, who's a girl in London whose dad is a mobster. He's played by Eddie Marsden. It's this business, and at the start he's hosting a wedding, I think for the other siblings, but you get the feel early on that Roxy lives with her mother and they're quite close, but she has had very little contact with her father, and so she sort of has those issues where she's trying to get his attention, and later in the episode she tries to get a job from him, and he once again kind of takes her for granted and is a complete arsehole, and Eddie Marsden is good at playing those quite slimy style characters, but he sort of wants to ship her off to the Bahamas, a branch out there for his business, but just give her a lower role, and says why not do it for 6 months and then come back. Lowe's, who's really into social media, and she starts getting a reaction through likes on there, and that's sort of how her powers are activated, and by the end of the first episode she meets a fellow girl, a student at her school, who also has similar powers, and they form a bit of a bond. The other girl sort of helps her harness the powers, so to speak, And then you have Ali, who's like an orphan, and she's taken in by like a heavily religious couple. And her whole thing is that for most of the episode she doesn't talk, so she can't talk. So it's that idea of, I guess, literally not having a voice in her case, and she's surrounded by dominating people who we sort of see the toxic side of religion essentially in the episode, and how for a lot of the episode she's being spoken to and like not really given a chance. So you get like a psychologist who like happens to be like a white middle class man who is like just doing all the talking for her and not really like considering her needs or anything. At one point, like the dad's or the foster father like mocks her for like having an ambition to be like an astronaut, and he's like just sees that as like a bit of a dream. But and he turns out to be a right like asshole by the end of the episode, like tries to rape her. And that's when her powers kicks in out of self-defense. Like Toni Collette, she has a role in it. You sort of see her in a couple of scenes. So I think she's going to become more of a featured character in later episodes. She seems to have like a political role because you see her speaking at like a podium, and so she seems to be some sort of politician, but we're unclear yet on her character, whether she's going to be like a leader for these girls, maybe a supportive figure, or if she's going to be like someone working for the government who is like, I don't know, maybe opposed to them because like they've got these powers and stuff and they're seen as being dangerous. It's not very good, this first episode. It's really not very good. I think it's very heavy-handed. It's very cheesy. There's some like really on-the-nose lines of dialogues. And I just think a lot of like the visuals and metaphors are very clunky. So this idea of electricity sparking out of them as an angst like reaction is very heavy-handed and cliched. So like, as I said, the girl on social media, or later on you've got like electric sort of pylons, which is like reacting cliches of some of these characters and the dialogue, or just some of the ideas. It's like, if you take Roxy's storyline, it is just so cliche ridden. As I said, you know, the fact that she's in this family and like the father is like a mobster, and the way her and her mother talk to each other, the mother especially is just like a walking cartoon character. It's like she literally speaks like someone out of EastEnders, and you don't care about her because like at the start of the episode where you first see her and Roxy interacting, because it's on the morning of this wedding, and the mother clearly doesn't want to go or hasn't been invited, but Roxy's been invited, so she's going along, and the mother is encouraging her to like dress up nice and kind of go and show them, make an impression. But you just think later on that the mother's very self-centered, because when Roxy says that like the father offered her a job like in the Bahamas and wanted to ship her out, and because it's that thing of like he almost doesn't want to deal with her, so it's like he ships her off to another country, and the mother just says, "Oh, that's great," and she just doesn't seem to care. Then that's not what Roxy wants, and she's just awful. But there's just some terrible like soap opera dialogue, because at one point Roxy's like, "Yeah, you got knocked up by a gangster, didn't you?" But yeah, there's just some really over the top scenes. So the stuff at the wedding is really bad, like, because Roxy just comes off as really annoying and obnoxious, which she doesn't like, that's not the point. The point is you're meant to hate everyone around her and actually like her. This very obnoxious tone to her where, like, at one point she's outside having a fag with, well, she's with this girl, so they're kissing. So, oh, that guy's a rich prick, like, that guy's a such and such prick, and it's just this sort of, like, potty mouth, but it just feels very forced. Like, it doesn't feel like it's entertaining or inventive, like language and potty mouth, but for the sake of it. Like, there's no real purpose. Like, it's almost like, okay, maybe that's the way teenagers talk sometimes, people of her age, but that still doesn't make it interesting to listen to it. It's because it's coming from a character that we're supposed to like and root for, and it just makes her really annoying and obnoxious. It has no real sense of tone. Like, the tone is up and down, because some of the stuff, like the stuff with Ali, feels a bit more serious. It feels really cheesy, and then there seems to be this middle ground where they're trying to go for some, I don't know, like, it's quite edgy and punky, and there's like a black humour to it, and that's the sort of stuff I can enjoy. Like, I do really get into that stuff, but I just wasn't sold on it in this. Like, it just felt very uneven. Like, 1 minute it was going for one style, and the next it was going for another, and I don't think it all gelled. Coherent story, you sometimes need to bring these characters together as a group, and I'm guessing at some point they're gonna do that, but like, that is a bit of a problem that stands out, I think. Then it could become a bit ragged. Part of the fun of this sort of like story is that you can have them as a group and them sort of working off each other, any of the main cast. So they've cast it well. I thought the acting was, like, overall pretty solid. It was more just the writing of the characters, and like some of the storylines quite cheesy. At times it did have a bit of a melodramatic feel to it, because it opens with this voiceover, and it's kind of just setting up the themes of the story. It's kind of, you know, it sort of says, imagine, like, alternative universe where women have power over men, and it does this whole like spiel, really. So it mentions, like, where God looks like a woman, such and such, and I don't know. For me, that was just very cheesy. Like, I can see what they were going for, but that could be an example where it sort of works better in a book than it does, like, on screen. Like, actually hearing those words in a narration. The plot was the most interesting out of them. There was some pretty good stuff in that. One weird scene with that stuff is, like, earlier in the episode they go to church, and you've got this guy giving a sermon, and he's just trying to be quite edgy, where he sort of cracks this joke about Scarlett Johansson, like, in her Avengers uniform, and he's just using it as part of the sermon, where he's saying about people getting impure thoughts. Felt like such a random example for him to use, and it just felt like he was going for a more edgy stand-up comedian style feel, a new generation, so him going for something a bit more edgy, which might not always sit well with traditional church goers, because when they're all watching it and you've got, like, the foster parents there watching it, they did seem quite stone-faced, more out of the alley stuff. Like, there was something to that which I could sort of get into. But then, even then, that got ruined with a couple of cheesy moments. Another thing about this is the effects are really bad. Like, they just look really bad and silly, and that definitely happens with the end of the Ali plot in this episode, because when the stepfather tries to rape her, or the foster father, because you have this whole thing over lunch where she actually speaks out for the first time, like finds a voice, and she says no thank you to the meat, to like eating the meat, and she says I hate meat. And then the father has this line about know your place, basically, and that's when he goes upstairs and tries to rape her, and that's when she reacts and kills him. But it's just, I mean, that was a really graphic scene, but unfortunately the effects were so bad that they just look really cheesy and really silly. Way out of the house she leaves, because you've got this very like traditional thing of the mother downstairs where she kind of knows what's going on, but because this is a very masculine and male dominated world, she sort of has to know her role. Like, she can't really step in and like disagree with the way the husband is behaving. So that's the whole thing. I did think, as I said, the Ali stuff was pretty good, and I would say that was the best of the 4 storylines. The stuff in Africa, I didn't really get a sense of much. I could see what they were going for, but we didn't really get that much of it. So I can't really comment yet on if I think that stuff is good or bad. The Roxy stuff pretty much sucked, even though, again, I would say that actress was pretty solid. And the other stuff was a bit forgettable. The Lowe's stuff, I didn't really, like that stuff. I thought them connecting at this like energy point and this like big stanchion, that again was a little bit goofy and sort of almost like a CW style moment. Now, I know this is obviously aimed at teenagers. Like, I think the novel was probably aimed at teenagers, and again, I've not read the novel, so I can't really compare too much between this and the novel, but it just felt like maybe with the novel there was a little bit more subtlety to it. And then there's just certain things that you can do in a novel where if you put it on screen, unless you adapt it in a certain way, it's just not gonna maybe hold up. Or maybe the novel's bad, I don't know, I can't comment because I haven't read the novel. But yeah, this was pretty bad. Like, I'm willing to give it some benefit of the doubt because maybe this is all set up, and once we actually get into like the story of the girls having this powers and exploring that more, then maybe it'll get better then. But I'm not too sure, to be honest, because there were some really goofy action scenes in this that makes me think that if we get more of that stuff, then I'm not going to like it much more, because the worst scene in the episode was definitely the scene with Roxy and her mum, where like a couple of mobsters, or rough looking dudes anyway, rush in and try to attack them. And I mean, they're attacking the mother. Now I'm not quite sure why, but I'm assuming maybe it's got something to do with the father. It's like never really made clear. I mean, Roxy at one point attacks a guy outside, like where the wedding is, like, because I think he's either hitting on her or he's like being aggressive towards her. So like she gives him the sparks, for want of a better word. So I don't know if it's something to do with him, like it's maybe people who know him, but whoever, it's a couple of rough looking guys, so maybe some link to the father. They come rushing in and they attack both of them, and like the mother's in a lot of danger, so Roxy uses her powers out of nowhere to save her. But that scene is just so bad. Like, it's just such a badly directed action scene, and once again it's OTT, and the effects once again are really bad. So Yeah, it's a really rough first episode, unfortunately. So that's my thoughts on the Power episode 1. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you've read the book, let me know how this matches up with the book. As I said, the first 3 episodes are up now, so chances are, if you're interested, you've probably seen the first 3, so just give me an impression of how it's developed over the first 3, and I might come back for one more. I might give another episode a shot and see where it goes, but at the moment my enthusiasm for the show is pretty low, I've got to say. Maybe it's just not my thing. That could be part of it as well, which is a shame because I really like Toni Collette and I quite like the premise. I think there's potential with the premise, but so far pretty dire stuff, I've got to say. So that's my review of episode 1 of The Power. Again, let me know your thoughts, like and subscribe as always, share me out on social media, and yeah, keep watching TV, keep watching films. I'll be back soon. Thanks guys.